I woke with my fingers clenched around a piece of charcoal and the taste of canyon dust between my teeth. For 3 long breaths, I thought the collapse had buried me alive again. Then someone struck the checkpoint bell. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound rolled between the red cliffs of Portal Canyon, sharp and familiar, and every hair on my arms rose. I knew that bell. I knew the cracked stone table beneath my elbows. I knew the brass route markers trembling on their hooks. I knew the pale blue portal shining beyond the checkpoint arch, pretending to be stable. Most of all, I knew the man standing 20 paces away, laughing while 60 delvers prepared to follow him to their deaths. My name was Oren Malk. I was 33 years old, a third-rank field cartographer employed by the Ashfall Map Guild, and I had somehow returned to the morning Captain Rusk destroyed my map. In the timeline I remembered, he would do it exactly 1 hour from now. He would tear my route sheet in half, accuse me of delaying the expedition, and lead 60 people into the eastern portal chain. 42 would die before sunset. 11 more would die during the canyon collapse 3 days later. I would survive only because Rusk abandoned me beneath a broken bridge and assumed the shifting portals would finish the job. They almost did. I spent 19 days crawling through folded terrain, drinking condensation from blue stone and marking portal changes with my own blood when my charcoal ran out. By the time rescuers found me, the Ashfall expedition had become the worst frontier disaster in 20 years. Rusk blamed the terrain. The guild blamed my maps. And I spent the next 6 years learning exactly how wrong both of them were. Now I was back. The same expedition banners snapped in the hot wind. The same supply mules stamped nervously beside the cliff wall. The same 60 delvers checked ropes, blades, ward lanterns, and emergency return stones that would become useless the moment the canyon shifted. And in my hand lay a map that should not have existed yet. Half of it was burned black around the edges. The surviving parchment showed thin silver lines, narrow canyons, portal mouths, and scattered circles representing places where I had rested, bled, or nearly died. Everything else was blank. That was the cruel little rule of the future map. It showed only places I had personally survived in the old timeline. Blank territory remained unknown. Unknown territory remained dangerous. The map could not tell me where I had never gone. It could not reveal treasure chambers, monster nests, or convenient shortcuts. It was not a divine guide. It was a record of suffering. Captain Rusk noticed me staring at it. He was 46, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, and famous enough to have his face stamped on 3 brands of expedition tonic. His crimson coat carried 12 silver clasps, each supposedly representing a successful portal campaign. I knew 4 of those successes had belonged to scouts he left behind. I knew 2 route maps had been stolen from dead cartographers. I also knew he had never understood the canyon. "Still polishing your little drawings, Malk," he called. A few nearby delvers laughed. In those days, cartographers were treated like nervous clerks who happened to own boots. We measured slopes, marked water, recorded monster signs, and received 1/10 the hazard pay of swordsmen who ignored our warnings. Rusk considered maps decorative, useful for impressing sponsors, optional during danger. I folded the burned parchment and slid it inside my coat. "Just checking the eastern chain," I said. His smile widened. "Don't strain yourself. I've already chosen the route." Of course he had. The eastern chain was shorter by 2 miles. It also crossed a spatial fault that would reverse direction at the 7th portal and turn the return path into a crushing dead end. I had 1 hour to stop the disaster. Unfortunately, I had already tried warning everyone in my first life. I remembered standing on that same stone platform, sweating through my shirt while Rusk mocked me in front of the expedition. I remembered begging the guild observer to delay departure by 20 minutes. I remembered holding up my map as proof. Rusk took it from my hands. Then he tore it down the center. This time, I did not intend to beg. I checked the checkpoint clock. 58 minutes remained. Across the yard, a young scout was watching me. Javale was 19, narrow-faced, sun-browned, and still wearing the plain gray scarf of an unranked canyon runner. Most people barely noticed her. I remembered what she became. In the old timeline, Je survived the expedition because I shoved her through a maintenance portal seconds before the eastern chain collapsed. 10 years later, she became the frontier's youngest chief scout. Before that, she spent 2 years trying to clear my name. She crossed the yard and lowered her voice. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Several," I said. Her eyes moved toward Rusk. "Is the eastern route bad?" That was Je. No mockery, no speech about Rusk's reputation, just the correct question. "It becomes fatal after the 7th gate." She studied my face for perhaps 2 seconds. "What do you need?" "Not proof. Not reassurance. Not permission." I glanced at the expedition roster, hanging beside the checkpoint office. Then I looked at Captain Rusk's signature line. The law had destroyed me in my first life because I had not understood it soon enough. This time it was going to save us. "I need him to remove my name from the expedition," I said. Je blinked. Rusk was about to underestimate the wrong cartographer, and I was going to help him do it. Portal Canyon was not one canyon. It was 93 miles of red stone sliced by gates that opened into overlapping spaces. Walk through one portal and you might emerge 10 yards ahead, 6 miles below, or in a valley that existed only for 14 minutes every third day. The canyon shifted every 36 hours. Not metaphorically. The walls groaned, paths folded, portals changed partners. Whole ledges slid sideways through space while remaining perfectly still to the eye. The Map Guild treated every shift like a weather event. Teams measured gate colors, pressure tones, exit temperatures, shadow angles, and something called echo delay, which was how long your own footsteps took to return from the other side. Most cartographers copied terrain. The best ones predicted movement. In my first timeline, I learned that prediction was not enough. A map did not merely describe the canyon. Under the correct conditions, the canyon read the map back. I had discovered that 6 years too late, after my reputation, career, and left hand had already been ruined. Now my hand was whole again. I flexed my fingers beneath the table and almost laughed. At 33, I was considered old for a third-rank cartographer. Promotions required sponsored expeditions, verified routes, and signatures from expedition leaders. Rusk had used my maps for 4 years and signed only one of them. He said I lacked courage. What he meant was that living cartographers could claim route ownership. Frontier Guild law was very specific. During a verified portal event, ownership of a newly stabilized route belonged to the registered cartographer whose map directly saved lives. Not the expedition captain. Not the guild sponsor. Not the person with the largest portrait on tonic bottles. The cartographer. Rusk knew the rule, which was why he stole maps before they could be verified and kept their creators attached to his expedition contracts. An employed mapmaker's route belonged partly to the expedition holder. An independent cartographer kept the whole claim. In my first life, he removed my name only after the disaster, then blamed me as an unauthorized contractor. This morning, I wanted him to remove it before we left. I entered the checkpoint office, where Guild Clerk Neem was stamping supply permits with the expression of a woman personally offended by paper. "I need a copy of the expedition roster," I said. She did not look up. "2 copper." I paid. "And a witnessed amendment form." That got her attention. "Captain's authorization required." "I know." She stood near the door, pretending to inspect rope inventory. I took the amendment form to the map table and laid my ordinary route sheet beside it. The sheet showed both available paths through the first 6 gates. The western route was longer and appeared less stable. It was also survivable. Beyond the 6th gate, my old markings stopped being normal cartography. I had drawn 3 tiny hooks near the edges of the portal's symbols and connected them with pressure lines. No one in the present would recognize the pattern. In the old timeline, a spatial scholar named Tavin Ray discovered those hooks 11 years from now. He called them anchor strokes. Used correctly, they could persuade a portal to remain connected to one destination. Used incorrectly, they could fold the mapmaker into a wall. I had learned that particular detail personally. The half-burned future map warmed beneath my coat. I took it out and placed it under the route sheet. The silver lines aligned. Not perfectly. The future map showed where I had survived, but this morning's canyon was still 3 hours away from the shift phase I remembered. The gates were breathing in a different rhythm. That meant I could not simply copy the old path. I needed to correct it. Outside, a portal gave a low humming sound. I counted the vibration. 7 beats. Pause. 5 beats. The eastern chain had already begun accumulating pressure. "Portal storm," je whispered from the doorway. "Minor 1, I said. A ripple of blue light crossed the checkpoint yard. Ropes lifted from the ground. Loose pages flew upward, hovered for a heartbeat, then dropped. Several delvers cheered. People are strangely enthusiastic about danger when it has not hurt them yet. I carried my map to the first survey post outside the arch. 3 gates were visible from there. 1 blue, 1 amber, and 1 gray with white sparks crawling across its surface. The ordinary safe marker stood before the blue gate. I ignored it. The marker had been placed during the previous shift. I drew a small triangle on the margin of my map, added 2 hook strokes, and connected them to the gray portal. The charcoal line flashed silver. Pain pinched the inside of my wrist. Not much. Enough to tell me the symbol had taken hold. The gray portal steadied. Its white sparks flattened into thin rings. Je stared. "What did you do?" "Asked it to remember where it was going." That is not something maps do. Apparently, the maps have been poorly informed. The storm reached us 30 seconds later. The blue gate snapped sideways and opened into a vertical shaft full of spinning stones. The amber gate folded into itself. The gray gate remained connected to a quiet ledge 50 yards farther down the canyon. I walked through it. Je followed. Behind us, 6 supply workers shouted in alarm as the checkpoint's warning rods turned red. I waved them toward the gray portal. "Through here, single file, don't touch the edges." All 6 crossed safely before the storm faded. The silver mark on my map went dark. My wrist throbbed, and the triangle I had drawn burned away, leaving a pale scar in the parchment. That was the first limitation. Anchor symbols consumed part of the surface they were written on. The second was worse. I could feel the portal's weight inside my skull. For 11 seconds, I knew exactly where both ends were. Then the connection released and the knowledge vanished. 1 minor gate had left me dizzy. Controlling the canyon would require something more than memory. Still, 8 people had crossed a portal storm without injury. Clerk Neem came running from the checkpoint, holding a verification slate. "What happened?" Route intervention, I said. Her slate recorded the fatting spatial residue on my map. Her eyebrows rose. Captain Rusk appeared behind her. He looked at the gray gate, then at the workers, then at me. He did not look impressed. He looked inconvenienced. That was when I knew the morning was going exactly as I needed. Rusk waited until we were back inside the checkpoint before beginning his performance. He had a gift for making cruelty sound administrative. "Cartographer Malk," he said loudly, ensuring that half the expedition could hear. "Why did you interfere with a marked portal without authorization?" Clerk Neem frowned. "He prevented 6 injuries. Or caused the instability in the first place." There it was. In my first timeline, that accusation would have made me panic. This time, I glanced at the verification slate. Did the slate record a pre-existing pressure surge? Neem checked. Yes, the surge began 41 seconds before his mark activated. Rusk's jaw tightened. He disliked objects that remembered facts. I laid my map flat on the table. The eastern route is accumulating spatial pressure. It will remain usable through 6 gates. The 7th will reverse after the next blue flare. Rusk gave the expedition a patient smile. Malk has always been cautious. 36-hour shifts reward caution. They reward experience. I have crossed the eastern chain 9 times. And I've crossed it 27. That was true. It was also irrelevant. A portal canyon did not care how famous you were when it changed its geometry. I pointed to the pressure hooks on my map. The chain is not flowing outward. It is circling back beneath itself. At the 7th gate, the route will compress. Rusk picked up the map. For one moment, the old terror struck me. I saw his hands tearing parchment. I heard the screams from the 7th gate. I smelled stone dust and burned hair. Then I reminded myself that this was not the same map. The future map remained hidden inside my coat. The sheet in Rusk's hands contained only what I wanted him to see. He turned it sideways. These marks are not guild standard. They will be. A few people laughed. Rusk did not. He leaned closer. You believe a parlor trick during a minor storm makes you a master cartographer. No. Good. I believe surviving the canyon does. His face changed. Only slightly. I had never spoken to him that way in the first timeline. Je stood behind the supply crates, very still. Rusk raised the map for everyone to see. This is what happens when support workers forget their rank. They confuse hesitation with wisdom. Then he tore the sheet in half. The sound was quieter than I remembered. Perhaps memory had made it larger. He dropped both pieces onto the table. You will not accompany my expedition. A murmur passed through the yard. I lowered my eyes, not in submission, but because I did not trust myself to hide my relief. Rusk mistook it for humiliation. He turned to Clerk Neem. Remove Oren Malk from the active roster. Record insubordination and unauthorized portal interference. Neem's mouth tightened. Captain, route personnel must acknowledge removal. I acknowledge it, I said immediately. Rusk looked almost disappointed. Neem placed the amendment form between us. Rusk signed first. His signature flared red, binding the change under guild oath. I signed second. The roster released my expedition claim with a soft chime. 4 years of unpaid route ownership vanished from his control. He had no idea. I folded my copy and put it beside the future map. Rusk pointed toward the town road. Leave the checkpoint. Certainly. Malicious compliance is not dramatic when done properly. It is mostly good posture and careful paperwork. I packed my charcoal, compass, measuring cord, 3 blank sheets, a brass straightedge, and the small bottle of binding ink I had been saving for promotion work. Je stepped forward. I'm leaving too. Rusk laughed. No, you're not. She removed her gray scout badge and placed it on the table. My contract permits withdrawal before first gate entry. His amusement disappeared. You'll never work another sponsored expedition. Je looked at me. I'll risk it. I wanted to tell her not to. In the old timeline, she had survived because of me. That did not mean she owed me blind loyalty now. But then I remembered what happened when she stayed. At the 5th gate, Rusk sent her ahead alone because she was the youngest. At the 7th, he ordered the rear guard to abandon her rope. She had carried that scar across her throat for the rest of her life. Record her withdrawal, I said. Rusk stepped toward me. You no longer give orders here. I was speaking to the clerk. Neem's stamp struck Je's contract. Another chime. Another person freed from his claim. We walked out of the checkpoint together while the expedition watched. I heard Rusk behind us. Departure in 20 minutes, Eastern Chain. No one challenged him. Reputation is a powerful thing. So is denial. Je waited until the checkpoint disappeared behind a bend. What now? I looked at the future map. One silver line led away from the expedition route toward an abandoned survey alcove beneath the western cliff. In the old timeline, I had sheltered there during the collapse. That meant it still existed. We claim a route, I said. With 2 people. With 1 cartographer and 1 scout. She smiled faintly. That sounds more expensive. It will be. The survey alcove contained a stone desk, a rusted lantern hook, and a locked cabinet that opened when you kicked it. Inside we found 4 rolls of spoiled parchment, 6 iron map pins, and a square of black portal cloth used to cover unstable gate models. I spread the future map across the desk. Je leaned close. Why are half the routes burned? They're not burned routes, they're places I never survived. She looked at me. I had not planned to tell her everything so soon. Then again, she had just sacrificed her career because I gave one quiet warning. So I told her. Not every detail. I told her I had lived this day before. I told her the eastern chain would fail. I told her the canyon would collapse in 35 hours and 12 minutes. I expected disbelief. Je tapped 1 silver line. This path crosses a solid cliff. Not after the shift. She accepted that faster than the time travel. What do we do first? I took one of the iron pins. Learn whether a map can hold a gate closed. The unstable gate lay beneath the alcove. It was little more than a vertical crack filled with green light, poolsing between 2 boulders. The guild had marked it condemned 3 years earlier. In my old timeline, that gate opened during the collapse and swallowed an entire rescue team. I had survived by driving an iron spike through a natural seam beside it. At the time, I thought I had blocked loose stone. Years later, I realized the spike aligned with one of Taven Ray's anchor patterns. The canyon had read my accidental symbol. This time, I intended to draw it correctly. I pinned a blank sheet to the stone floor. On it, I mapped the gate, the 2 boulders, the alcove, and the nearest stable landmark, a split red pillar 43 yards south. Then I added 4 anchor hooks around the gate symbol. My first attempt failed. The green crack widened and spat out a gust of air cold enough to frost Je's scarf. My second attempt made the left boulder hum. My third gave me a nosebleed. Je crouched beside me with a cloth. You said you knew how this worked. I know how it will work 11 years from now. That sounds less useful when you say it aloud. It feels less useful too. The future map showed the location but not the completed symbol. In the old timeline, I had passed through this area half-conscious. Memory gave me the shape of the canyon, not the exact mathematics. So I did what cartographers were supposedly good at. I measured. The gate pulsed every 9 seconds. Its left edge drifted half an inch north during each pulse, then reset on the 5th cycle. The frost formed more heavily on the western stone. Echo delay was 3 beats from the front and 8 from the side. The gate was not swinging randomly. It was trying to connect to 2 destinations at once. I redrew the symbol with one hook longer than the others and placed an iron pin through the center. The charcoal flashed. The gate snapped shut. Not dimmed. Not weakened. Closed. The green light vanished, leaving an ordinary crack between 2 boulders. The iron pin rang like a struck bell. My knees buckled. For several seconds, I felt both abandoned destinations pulling at my bones. One was filled with freezing water. The other was somewhere high above the canyon, under open sky. Then the pressure released. Je caught my shoulder. You locked it. I wiped my nose. For now, the symbol had burned a square hole through the parchment. The iron pin had turned silver. When I touched it, I could feel the sealed gate like a tight knot at the edge of my awareness. My second milestone. A map seal. Not simply a record, but a command the canyon recognized. We returned to town through the maintenance path and entered the Ashfall Map Guild at 11 minutes past noon. The guild occupied a long sandstone building with blue shutters and a roof covered in weather instruments. Inside, junior clerks copied route sheets while senior cartographers argued over scale ratios. No one noticed us until Je placed the silver pin on the registrar's desk. Registrar Holland was a round man with ink permanently staining 3 fingers. What is that? Verification residue from a sealed portal, I said. He adjusted his spectacles. A sealed portal. Gate Cinder 17, beneath the Western Survey alcove. That gate cannot be sealed. It has 2 exit pressures. That was the problem. He sent 2 inspectors. They returned 58 minutes later carrying a pressure slate that showed no active gate where Cinder 17 had been. By then, half the guild was staring at me. Holland placed the silver pin inside a glass evidence box. Who authorized the experiment? No one. He inhaled sharply. Who owns the map? I do. Under which expedition claim? None. I handed him Rusk's signed roster amendment. His eyes moved across it twice. Then a third time. You were formally released before the portal event. Yes. And Captain Rusk classified your storm crossing as unauthorized interference. He did. Holland looked toward the inspectors. Did Malk's map directly stabilize the gate? Both nodded. Then provisional route rights belonged to him. The room became very quiet. Not because a condemned gate mattered much. It did not. But route ownership created precedent. My symbols had worked during 2 verified portal events in one morning. Rusk had accidentally made sure he could claim neither. Holland began filling out a provisional license. The building shook. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Every compass needle in the guild swung east. A clerk shouted from the signal balcony. Emergency flare from the canyon. My stomach tightened. The Eastern expedition had reached the 7th gate earlier than before. Rusk must have increased their pace after I left. A second flare rose beyond the cliffs. Blue. Then red. Blue meant route instability. Red meant trapped personnel. Je was already fastening her scarf. How many? In the first timeline, All 60 entered before the reversal. And now, I looked at the clock. Rusk's impatience had changed the timing. The future map grew warm. A new silver line appeared, faint and trembling, following the maintenance path toward the western chain. The map was showing a place I had survived before. But the line ended at a blank section. "We can reach them," I said. Je saw the blank area. "Can we get them out?" "I don't know." That was the honest answer. The future map could guide me only through old suffering. Saving people would require drawing something new. We returned to the checkpoint with 2 guild inspectors, Registrar Holland, and a wagon carrying emergency portal stakes. The yard was chaos. Families crowded the outer fence. Reserve delvers argued with checkpoint guards. The expedition's signal crystal flashed red every 12 seconds. Clerk Neem met us at the arch. 47 confirmed trapped beyond the 6th gate. 13 returned before reversal. "Rusk?" I asked. "Trapped." Of course he was. He never abandoned people until he was certain he could escape first. I studied the pressure board. The eastern chain had folded exactly as I remembered, but one detail had changed. Instead of compressing into a single dead end, the 7th gate had split into 3 overlapping loops. Rusk's faster pace had forced more spatial weight through the chain. That gave us less time. It also gave me an opening. "Where are the canyon hounds?" I asked. Neem stared. "The what?" A reserve guard pointed east. "Pack of 23, driven out by the flare. They're circling the lower checkpoint." Canyon hounds were 6-legged creatures with plated shoulders and an unfortunate interest in warm supplies. Individually manageable. In a pack, dangerous enough to scatter a rescue team. In the first timeline, they tore through the emergency rope station, while everyone focused on the trapped expedition. I had no intention of fighting 23 hounds. I took a blank sheet from my case. "Holland, I need temporary cartographic authority over the portal plaza." He looked alarmed. "That requires a 5th-rank license." "Then give me an emergency 3rd-rank variance." "Those are for route repairs." "I am repairing a route." A howl echoed between the cliffs. The first hound appeared on a ridge above the checkpoint. Holland stamped the variance. Sometimes bureaucracy becomes surprisingly flexible when teeth arrive. I mapped the lower plaza, the supply road, 3 inactive training gates, and the narrow side canyon where the hounds were gathering. In the old timeline, that side canyon had folded into a harmless loop during the collapse. I had wandered through it 11 times before realizing the same white boulder kept appearing. The future map still showed the loop. I drew the side canyon as I remembered it, then added directional strokes at both ends. Not anchors. Arrows. That distinction mattered. An anchor told space to stay. An arrow told pressure where to go. The first hound charged down the slope. Je stood between me and the ridge with a short spear. "No pressure," she said, "but faster would be nice." I connected the supply road to the loop. The charcoal ignited silver. Every line on the sheet lifted from the parchment like glowing wire. The training gate beside the checkpoint opened. Not into its usual practice chamber. Into the side canyon. The hound lunged through. 3 seconds later, it appeared at the far end of the same canyon, still running. Then it passed through again. And again. The rest of the pack followed. All 23 charged into the redirected route, convinced they were closing on us. Instead, they ran through an empty canyon loop that returned them to its beginning. The strain hit me harder than the sealed gate. My vision blurred. Every circuit of the pack pulled against the arrows on my map. I could feel paws striking stone, 23 bodies carrying momentum through folded space. I dropped to one knee. Je gripped my shoulder. Can you hold it? Not long. The reserve guards rolled two iron barriers across the side canyon's physical entrance. When the last hound completed its fifth circuit, I erased one arrow. The training gate released. The entire pack tumbled into the closed side canyon, confused, exhausted, and trapped behind the barriers. No one cheered at first. They simply stared. Then a guard began laughing. Not mockery. Relief. My third milestone had taken less than 4 hours. I had redirected a monster pack without drawing a weapon. Registrar Holland looked from the trapped hounds to my glowing map. What exactly are you becoming, Malk? A cartographer. That is not cartography. I folded the sheet before the symbols could burn through it completely. It should be. The expedition crystal flashed again. Neem read the signal. Air supply failing beyond the 7th gate. Estimated collapse in 2 hours and 18 minutes. The laughter ended. I approached the eastern portal. Its surface looked blue, but the edge shadow bent inward. Rusk's group is inside a 3-loop compression, I said. If we open the wrong gate, we make it tighter. One of the senior rescue delvers swore. Can you redirect them like the hounds? Not safely. People resist portal pressure. Panic makes it worse. What do you need? I looked at the plaza. 16 gates stood around it in a broad circle. Most were used for training, supply transfer, and short-range travel. Bronze route lines had been set into the paving stones. In the old timeline, during the final canyon collapse, all 16 gates activated at once. The portal plaza became the center of the disaster. It was also the place where I first saw the canyon respond to a complete map. I had been lying under the checkpoint stairs with a broken wrist while spatial lines burned across the stones. For 3 seconds, the entire plaza looked like a living diagram. I remembered every line. I need the plaza cleared, I said. Every loose object removed, every gate measured, every route marker copied. Holland glanced at the clock. Can you free them? Yes. I said it because everyone needed certainty. Inside, I was less comfortable. I knew how the collapse looked. I knew where I had survived. But I had never controlled 16 gates. And the blank spaces on my future map were spreading. For the next 91 minutes, the checkpoint became a map workshop. Je measured gate temperatures and called the numbers while Neem recorded them. Holland assigned 8 junior cartographers to copy pressure readings. Reserve delvers hammered silver stakes into the plaza at 12-foot intervals. I worked in the center. The ordinary method would have produced 16 separate route sheets. I used one. A sheet of parchment 6 feet wide was unrolled across the paving stones and held down with iron bars. I drew the plaza first, then every gate, stake, arch, drainage channel, and bronze route line. The living battle map from my old memory required precision. One wrong angle could send 47 people into solid stone. The half-burned future map lay beside my knee. Its silver lines brightened whenever I drew a place I had survived. They remained dark near the routes I had never entered. That gave me boundaries. Not answers. Captain Rusk's voice came through the expedition crystal at 38 minutes before collapse. Static chewed through every word. Checkpoint respond. Eastern route compromised. Cartographic error confirmed. Request immediate extraction. Cartographic error. Even trapped inside a collapsing portal knot, the man had found time to blame a map. Neem looked at me. I kept drawing. Rusk's voice returned. Malk's unauthorized markings may have destabilized the chain. Je snatched the crystal. Malk was removed before your expedition entered the first gate. Your signed amendment is on file. Silence. Then Scout Vale, you are not authorized to operate that crystal. I withdrew too. Another silence. I almost smiled. Rusk changed tactics. Oren, listen carefully. Whatever disagreement we had, there are lives at risk. I'm aware. I am restoring you to expedition, status effective immediately. No. You don't understand. Under emergency authority, I can. You released me under a witness guild oath. Restoration requires my consent. The crystal hissed. Rusk knew the law. He had simply assumed I did not. What do you want? He asked. That question told me more than the panic in his voice. He still thought this was a negotiation over credit. I want everyone beyond the 7th gate to remain still when the plaza lights turn white. You expect me to surrender command. I expect you to stop making the canyon worse. A long breath crackled through the crystal. Then he said, you always were an arrogant little clerk. Je reached for the crystal again. I stopped her. Captain, the compression tightens when large groups move against the gate flow. Order the expedition to sit down, extinguish all but 4 ward lanterns, and separate into groups of 5. Why? Because 47 moving bodies create 47 conflicting root intentions. That is superstition. It will be frontier doctrine in 9 years. He did not understand that sentence. I did not explain. You have 36 minutes, I said. You are free to spend them arguing. Then I handed the crystal back to Neem. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. After that, the signal slate showed movement inside the eastern not slowing. Rusk had obeyed. He simply did not want us to hear him do it. The plaza map took shape. Each gate symbol had anchor hooks. Pressure arrows connected them in pairs. The bronze root lines beneath the parchment acted as conductors, extending the drawn geometry into the plaza. I added 3 empty loops where excess pressure could circulate. 1 loop for heat, 1 for motion, 1 for hostile intent. The last was theoretical. In the old timeline, spatial researchers discovered that portals responded differently to travelers who intended violence. The canyon did not read minds. It read the way mana gathered in muscles, weapons, and forward movement. That was why charging monsters were easier to redirect than frightened civilians. The map could not identify good and evil. It could distinguish approach from attack. At 23 minutes, the first silver line spread off the parchment and entered the bronze root channels. At 19 minutes, 4 gates opened without being touched. At 17, the whole plaza began humming. My hands shook. Blood ran from my nose and spotted the map. Where it landed, the lines turned dark red. Je knelt beside me. You're overloading. I know. Then stop. If I stop now, the gates release unevenly. She looked toward the expedition crystal. 47 life signs pulsed inside it. What do you need? The answer came from a memory I hated. In the old timeline, after the collapse, I had been trapped beneath the bridge while she held my damaged hand and kept me awake. She counted backward from 100 because I could no longer remember my own name. I placed her hand on the western edge of the map. Keep this corner flat. That's all. No matter what you see, don't let it fold. She pressed both palms down. I trust you. 3 words. Quietly spoken. More useful than any oath. At 12 minutes, the plaza gates rose from their stone frames. Not physically. Their images stretched upward as walls of translucent light. Every root in the canyon seemed to pull toward us. The future map ignited. The burned edges curled but did not crumble. New lines began appearing in the blank areas. Not because I had survived them before, because I was surviving them now. The artifact was changing. So was I. I no longer saw portals as doors. I saw tension, direction, weight. 16 gates, 47 trapped people, 3 compression loops, 1 failing eastern chain. And Captain Rusk, still trying to force his will through a canyon that had never cared about his reputation. The checkpoint clock struck the final 10 minutes. I drew one line across the map. The entire portal plaza unfolded. The parchment rose from the ground like a sheet caught by wind, but none of its corners moved. Je held the western edge. The iron bars held the others. The center lifted until the map formed a shallow, glowing basin, and every symbol became a miniature gate suspended above its surface. The living battle map had awakened. I could see the expedition. Not their faces. Their positions. 47 sparks clustered inside 3 overlapping corridors, compressed so tightly that each route bent into the next. 4 sparks stood apart. Rusk and his personal guards. Naturally, he had positioned himself closest to the return gate. The eastern knot tightened. 8 minutes remained. I anchored the plaza's north gate and connected it to the outermost compression loop. The symbol burned beneath my fingertip. A wall of blue light opened. 5 trapped delvers fell through onto the plaza stones. Healers rushed forward. The crowd beyond the barriers erupted. I barely heard them. The extraction had changed the pressure balance. The remaining loops twisted. I redirected the excess motion through an empty training circuit and opened a second gate. Another 5 emerged. Then another. Each group arrived exactly as I had ordered them to sit. 5 people, 4 lanterns among the entire expedition, no one pushing against the route. Rusk's spark moved. He was trying to reach the next extraction point out of order. The map reacted. His loop narrowed. The crystal flared. Malk opened my gate. Remain still. I am the expedition commander. Not on my route. The guild verification pillars around the plaza lit one after another. There were 6 of them, carved with oath runes and connected directly to the frontier registry. Everything happening on the plaza was now a verified portal event. Witnessed. Recorded. Legally binding. Registrar Holland stood beside the central pillar, reading the appearing script. First extraction confirmed. Route intervention attributed to independent cartographer Oren Malk. Rusk heard him through the crystal. The captain's spark stopped moving. For the first time, I think he understood. Every person my map saved strengthened my claim. Every gate I stabilized became evidence. And because he had removed me from his roster before departure, he had no ownership share. He had signed away the canyon. 6 minutes. I extracted 10 more. The plaza filled with exhausted delvers, many crying, several injured, all alive. Families shouted from behind the barriers. Guild officers counted names. The compression knot began to collapse inward. I drew 2 redirecting arrows and sent the pressure into the sealed Cinder 17 gate. Far beneath the western alcove, the silver pin took the strain. A crack appeared in its glass evidence box. Holland shouted a warning. I know. The sealed gate could absorb pressure because it had 2 abandoned destinations. But only temporarily. 5 minutes. I opened another route. 7 people emerged instead of 5. Someone had broken formation. The living map bucked. The eastern side folded upward, nearly snapping closed. Je's hand slid across the parchment. She caught the edge with her forearm. Still holding, she gasped. I erased a pressure arrow with my thumb. Pain shot from my hand to my shoulder. The charcoal line did not merely stain the skin. It entered it. For one terrible second, I felt the eastern canyon folded inside my arm. Then the map flattened. 4 minutes. 32 people had been extracted. 15 remained. Rusk's group of 4. 2 wounded scouts. 9 rear guards who had been ordered to hold the collapsing route. That detail settled something inside me. Even trapped, Rusk had placed other people between himself and danger. In the first timeline, I had wanted him to confess. I had imagined dragging him before the guild, listing every abandoned scout, every stolen map, every falsified report. Now I saw how unnecessary that was. His decisions were writing the confession for me. I extracted the 2 wounded scouts and 5 rear guards. The knot shrank to 8 sparks. 3 minutes. Rusk spoke through the crystal. You have proven your point. I'm not making a point. I will certify your promotion. I already have 6 verification pillars doing that. I can give you command of the mapping division. You don't own it. His voice cracked. Oren, get me out. Behind me, nearly 40 rescued delvers listened. So did their families. So did the guild inspectors. I could have made him wait. I could have demanded an apology. I could have opened his route last for the pleasure of watching him panic. That would have made me more like him than I was willing to become. I mapped the remaining pressure. Rusk's loop was closest to collapse, but opening it first would send the final rear guards deeper into the knot. I spoke into the crystal. Captain, order your guards to move behind the 5 remaining delvers. They are under contract to protect me. The safest route opens from the rear. That makes no tactical sense. It makes spatial sense. 2 minutes. The knot compressed. One of the rear guard sparks dimmed. I looked at Rusk's spark. Give the order. He hesitated for 4 seconds. 4 entire seconds, while another person's life faded. Then he ordered his guards back. The map recorded the delay. The verification pillars recorded that too. I opened the rear route. 5 delvers came through. 1 minute. The final 3 guards emerged. Only Rusk remained. His loop had become a single bright point, surrounded by crushing lines. I placed my finger on the map. He whispered through the crystal. Please. Not loudly. Not proudly. Just one frightened man speaking to the cartographer he had dismissed. I drew the extraction line. Rusk fell through the central gate and landed on his knees in front of the 6 verification pillars. The eastern chain collapsed behind him. The shock wave hit the plaza. My 3 empty loops absorbed the heat, motion, and hostile pressure. Every gate blazed white. The bronze lines beneath the paving stones ignited. For one heartbeat, I held the entire portal plaza in my mind. Every entrance, every exit, every fold. I closed my hand. All 16 gates went still. The future map settled flat. The checkpoint clock reached 0. 47 people had entered the compression. 47 people stood alive on the plaza. Captain Rusk raised his head. Around him, the verification pillars began reading the official consequences aloud. The first ruling transferred emergency ownership of the stabilized eastern approach to me. The second awarded me provisional control over the western maintenance route, the sealed Cinder 17 junction, and the lower training loop used during the Hound diversion. The third suspended Captain Rusk's expedition, rights pending investigation. He tried to stand during that one. 2 guild wardens asked him to remain seated. He did not enjoy the symmetry. The pillars continued. Unauthorized route alteration by command personnel. disregard of recorded cartographic warning, destruction of an active route document, improper concentration of expedition traffic, failure to follow emergency grouping instructions, preferential positioning of command staff during rescue, 4-second delay in issuing a life safety order. That last one silenced even Rusk. The map had remembered. Of course it had. Maps remembered everything when people allowed them to. By sunset, the portal plaza had become a public hearing. Representatives arrived from the Delvers Association, the Map Guild, the Frontier Governor's Office, and 3 sponsoring houses whose heirs had been trapped in the eastern chain. Rusk changed his account twice. First, he claimed my symbols had caused the reversal. The pressure slate disproved him. Then he claimed he had ordered me to develop the rescue map. His signed roster amendment disproved that. Finally, he argued that all expedition routes created during his declared operation belonged to him. Registrar Holland read the relevant law aloud. Route ownership belonged to the registered cartographer, whose independent map saved lives during a verified portal event. Independent was the word that ended him. Rusk had made me independent himself. He looked at the amendment form for a long time. I could almost see the morning replaying behind his eyes, his hand taking my map, his voice ordering me removed, his signature glowing red. He had believed he was humiliating a low-ranked support worker. Instead, he had released the only person capable of claiming the canyon out from under him. The Delvers Association suspended his command license for 12 years. The Map Guild filed claims regarding 7 disputed routes from earlier expeditions. 3 retired scouts came forward before midnight. One produced a copy of a map Rusk had claimed as his own. His sponsors withdrew by morning. The tonic company scraped his face off their signs 2 days later. I did not arrange any of that. Consequences rarely need assistance once evidence gives them a direction. Rusk requested a private meeting. I agreed, with Joe and Clerk Neem present as witnesses. He looked smaller without the crimson coat. The guild wardens had taken its silver clasps as evidence. He offered me 12,000 gold crowns. I had never seen 12,000 crowns written in one place. He offered a 5th-rank license, though he no longer had authority to grant one. He offered to name me chief cartographer of a new expedition company. Then he offered an apology. It was the least expensive thing on the list, and somehow the hardest for him to say. "I misjudged your ability," he said. "That was not your worst mistake." His jaw tightened. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. You expect me to believe this wasn't revenge." I thought about the first timeline. The 19 days underground. The broken hand. The hearings where he called me unstable. The years I spent drawing maps no guild would certify. For a long time, I had wanted revenge more than sleep. But sitting across from him now, I felt mostly tired. "I wanted the expedition to live," I said. "You losing command was a consequence of how you treated the people who kept it alive. I can still be useful to you." "No. You don't have my contacts. I have my roots. You don't have sponsors. The 47 people I rescued have families." His expression hardened. "You think gratitude lasts?" "No, that is why ownership law exists." Je hid a smile. Rusk leaned forward. "The canyon will kill you eventually." "Possibly. You cannot control every shift." "Not yet." That unsettled him more than anything else I said. I slid a document across the table. It was not a punishment. It was a rescue invoice. Emergency portal stakes, replacement parchment, healer expenses, plaza repairs, damaged verification glass, and compensation for the 4 rear guards he had ordered to remain behind. Guild law placed those costs on the expedition commander, whose negligence triggered the event. Total liability, 31,806 crowns. His face went pale. I cannot pay this. Then the guild will liquidate your expedition shares. You'll ruin me. No, I'm declining to pay for your decisions. He stared at the invoice. I stood. At the door, he said my name. For 1 second, his voice sounded almost like the famous Captain Rusk again. Oren, when the next shift comes, you'll need experienced command. I looked back. The next shift is exactly why I don't. 36 hours after the rescue, Portal Canyon moved. This time, the map guild was ready. And this time, I was holding the map. The shift began at dawn, with a sound like mountains grinding their teeth. The people of Ashfall gathered on rooftops and canyon platforms to watch the red cliffs blur at the edges. 16 checkpoint gates changed color. 3 vanished. 5 new ones appeared. My living map changed with them. After the rescue, the half-burned future parchment had fused with the 6-foot plaza sheet. The burned sections remained dark, but the surviving silver roots had spread into the newer map like roots. It still had limits. It showed only terrain I had personally crossed or actively anchored. Blank places remained blank. Every portal command cost mana, concentration, and physical strain. If I held more than 4 major gates at once, my fingers went numb. If I redirected too much pressure, the map burned away part of itself. And it refused to lie. That may have been its most useful feature. A normal cartographer could draw a hopeful route. The living map accepted only a route that truly existed, or one I had enough power to create. During the shift, I stood in the center of the portal plaza with Jay at my right and 12 guild cartographers positioned around the bronze lines. When the north wall folded, I anchored Gate 4. When an underground portal opened beneath the supply yard, I redirected it to an empty ledge. When 2 rescue corridors tried to connect to the same exit, I locked one and stabilized the other. The shift lasted 17 minutes. No one died. When it ended, the Frontier Registry promoted me directly from 3rd rank to 5th. 3 months later, after I stabilized the South Canyon during a crystal migration, I reached 6th rank. Within 1 year, Ashfall stopped treating maps as passive records. We established the first school of active cartography. I taught junior mapmakers how to draw anchor hooks, pressure arrows, safety loops, and intent channels. I did not keep the techniques to myself. Power built on secrecy becomes another form of dependency, and I had already lived under enough of that. Je became my chief scout. She had an irritating habit of entering unknown portals before I finished telling her not to. She also returned with measurements no one else could obtain. Together, we mapped 14 permanent routes, closed 9 predatory gates, and redirected 2 monster migrations away from settled towns. The harmless loop technique became standard frontier defense. No one called cartographers support clerks anymore. Rusk's investigation lasted 8 months. The guild confirmed that he had stolen credit for 6 routes, abandoned 17 scouts across 12 years, and falsified danger reports after 4 failed expeditions. He lost his command license permanently. His expedition shares were sold to cover the rescue liability. The remaining amount funded pensions for the families of scouts who had died on his earlier routes. He was not imprisoned. He was not exiled. He simply became what he had spent years pretending other people were. Unqualified. The last time I saw him, he was working as a caravan guide on the safe Western Road. No portals, no command authority, no one required to trust his judgment with their life. He avoided looking at me. I let him. My victory did not require his attention. 6 years after my regression, the Portal Canyon faced the largest coordinated attack in frontier history. A rival city tried to seize Ashfall's routes by sending mercenaries through 7 linked gates at once. They expected walls. They expected soldiers. They expected a battle. I met them alone in the plaza, with the living map spread beneath my hands. Their commander laughed when he saw no weapon. I drew one line. 7 invasion routes folded shut. Not collapsed. Not destroyed. Closed as neatly as doors at the end of business. The entire mercenary force found itself back at its own departure plaza, facing the wrong direction. That single stroke earned me the title of Master Spatial Cartographer. People began calling me the strongest mapmaker on the frontier. They were wrong about one thing. I was not strong because the future map had chosen me. It had not chosen anything. It was the remains of a life I had survived badly. Every silver root represented hunger, fear, pain, or a place where someone left me behind. In my second timeline, I turned those scars into roads other people could walk safely. That was the real power. Je once asked whether I still thought about the 42 people who died in the first expedition. I told her the truth. Every day. Regression did not erase them from my memory just because I saved different versions of them. Somewhere inside me, both outcomes remained real. That was why I refused to become careless. It was why every route received 3 checks. Why every scout had withdrawal rights. Why no expedition leader could destroy a cartographer's work without automatic review. Why route ownership followed the person who saved lives, not the person who claimed command. I had returned wanting to stop one disaster. Instead, I changed the law, the guild, and the way the entire frontier understood space. Captain Rusk thought maps were only useful after powerful men decided where to go. He never understood that a true map can do more than show a path. It can hold a door open. It can close one. It can guide the lost home. And sometimes, when a man insists on choosing the wrong route twice, it can make sure the consequences know exactly where to find him.